Okay, as given the poster in the WhatsApp group, this is the same poster we are sharing. Rather, we're going to be going over the biographies, but not the full life of the so-and-so, but more on the early expressions, qualities, virtues, and some aspects with respect as contained in the some of the previous years questions. So to do with Ayasma Sariputta, Ayasma Ananda, Ayasma Sivali. I presume by now you know the meaning of Ayasma. In case you didn't know, Ayasma just means venerable. Okay, so Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Ananda, and Venerable Sivali. Okay, we start off with Ayasma Sariputta Thera. For those who remember your senior level notes, before there was Venerable Sariputta, the lay person's name he was born with, he was called Upatissa. Only when he was ordained into the Buddha Sasana did he what they call acquire the name Sariputta. Okay, we start in this case with the aspiration. Now, Buddhist concept of time is in world cycles and so on. Towards the end of this what we call afternoon's session, I will present a few slides talking about the kappa and mahakappa and all those kind of terms, which I actually presented in at senior level already, but I'm including it in this afternoon's sharing session. So just to get an idea lah. Here, the notes say that we go back 100,000 world cycles and one incalculable period in time to the era of Buddha Anomadasi. So as you know, there are many Samma Sambuddhas in the past, and there will be many Samma Sambuddhas in the future. The one we are familiar with during this time period is that of Buddha Gautama. So the 18th Buddha prior to Gautama Buddha, Sariputta at the time, was known as Sarada, and Moggallana was born with the name Sirivardhana. Now, Sarada, what they call unsatisfied with his luxurious life of wealth and pleasures, adopted the life of an ascetic. Now, inspired by the radiance of Anomadasi Buddha, he had prepared a canopy of fragrant flowers which held above the Buddha to form a fragrant chamber. Now, the Buddha, accompanied by his chief disciples, Nisaba and Anoma, attained a higher meditative stage, which he retained for a week. Now, Sarada was so inspired by this Buddha that he remained thus, holding the fragrant chamber so as not to disturb the Buddha. Now, Buddha Anomadasi, seeing the merit of Sarada and desiring to inspire Sarada to further heights, instructed Nisaba to dispense the Dhamma to Sarada and the devotees who were present. So inspiring were the Dhamma and the deportment of the chief disciple that Sarada paid homage to Buddha Anomadasi and is aspired to be the first chief disciple of a future Buddha. Now, at the bottom, I give you the what they call the above notes from this particular source. Now, something to note here is that merits, that means wholesome actions done for a Samma Sambuddha, it starts off with the first meal and it ends with the last meal. Those meritorious actions done for that means that the first meal and the last meal are extremely meritorious, more meritorious than the other what we call meritorious conduct or actions done for a Samma Sambuddha in between the two. But nevertheless, they are still very meritorious, and the energies generated for such what I call punya or meritorious actions can last many lifetimes compared to what we do now in offering dana, say as for example dana to a wholesome monk today. Okay, those are some of the aspects of kamma that we should be aware of. Now, Buddha Anomadasi looked into the future and seeing that his aspiration would be fulfilled, prophesied that 100,000 world cycles and one infinite period into the future, Sarada will be the first chief disciple by the name Sariputta of Buddha Gautama. Now, Sarada then urged his friend to perform meritorious deeds and to aspire to be the second chief disciple of Buddha Gautama. So, inspired by his friend, Sariputta built an alms hall, provided meals and robes to the Buddha and his retinue of 100,000 monks, and aspired to be the second chief disciple of Buddha Gautama. Now, Anomadasi Buddha, seeing that Sirivardhana's aspiration would be fulfilled, prophesied that he would be the second chief disciple named Moggallana of Buddha Gautama. Now, what is interesting to note is that although the two of them did a lot of meritorious deeds towards Buddha, Anomadasi, and the Sangha members, at that time, it took something like 100,000 world cycles and one infinite period into the future. One of the reasons is because the time spent between the appearance of each and every Sammasambuddha is very, very long. And number two, they are unlikely, these two are unlikely the only ones who aspire to be first and second chief disciple of the Buddha. So of the few people who aspire for this, they sort of, with a strong aspiration, a strong wish, they have to wait their turn, sort of lah. Okay, so there are others also who also want to have similar honors. Now, the knowledge, wisdom, and abilities of the Buddha were incomparable. There was no one in the Sangha who would take his place or substitute for the teacher. However, the combined qualities of the two chief disciples complemented those of the Buddha. So Sariputta, who was foremost in wisdom, was steady and focused his energies on leading as many persons as possible to the first stage of sainthood, Sotapan, also known as stream enterer. Now, this is because once they had entered this stage, they would move forward and reach the other stages within 7 more births. There was no longer the danger of their falling back and obtain birth in an unhappy realm. Now, Sariputta felt that he should place as many persons as possible in the path. Now, Moggallana, the more aggressive of the two, was foremost in psychic powers, feeling that even one more rebirth was one too many. Moggallana concentrated his efforts on taking devotees from Sotapanna to Arhatship. And the two friends continued to work together as one, each drawing on the strengths of the other for the betterment of men, gods and men. Now, before going on, by now, you should know that there are 4 stages of enlightenment, starting with the first stage of sainthood, which is Sotapan. Then you have the second one, the Sakadagami, the third stage of sainthood, Anagami, and finally the 4th stage being Arahat, where at the Arahat level, we have already uprooted the 10 defilements. But for the Sotapan, they uprooted only the first 3 out of the 10 defilements. And the Sotapan doesn't mean that once you attain Sotapan, it does not mean that you take 7 more lifetimes to become an Arahat. You can, within that life, when you became Sotapan, you can actually become an Arahat. But if you are slow, as those who have attended the workshop, entering the stream, the Buddha uses the term negligent. That means very slow coach, take his time. So that one will be maximum of 7 more lifetimes. So if you're very slow, it's 7 more lifetimes. But usually they are hardworking, and within that same life, after having attained Sotapan, would normally become Arahats. Okay. Now, continuing, the Buddha had the deepest respect and regard for his chief disciples and used them as an example for his monks. He encouraged his monks to associate with and emulate the chief disciples by saying, "Associate, O monks, Sariputta and Moggallana, and keep company with them. They are wise bhikkhus and helpers of their fellow monks." Now, the Buddha appointed Sariputta as his first chief disciple, sometimes called the general of the Dhamma. Now, Dhamma Senapati, Sena, S-E-N-A, means soldier, or in this case, general of the Dhamma, basically foremost in wisdom. Moggallana as his second chief disciple, foremost in psychic powers. The roles of the chief disciples, often called the chief pair of disciples or the excellent pair, are very important. They helped the Buddha with his growing congregation and had three main functions to perform as follows: to help the Buddha in the consolidation and teaching of the Dhamma for the benefit of men and gods, divine beings or gods. Actually, they means beings in higher place existence than humans, usually devas and brahmas. To be a role model for the Sangha, monks and nuns, to supervise the training and administration of the Sangha. Now, in addition to his wisdom, Sariputta was well known for his patience, compassion, humility, and helpfulness to others. So here, as I underline clearly, are some of Venerable Sariputta's qualities. So not only did he help the community and the monks in the Dhamma, he also provided material help and comfort. So when the monks left for their alms round early in the morning, Sariputta did not join them. Instead, he stayed in the monastery and made sure that everything was in order. Now, if one of the novice monks had forgotten to sweep out a room, or if any item was disarranged, Sariputta would put it in place and swept the premises. He wanted to ensure that the monastery should at all times be in order so that visiting devotees would not have a negative impression of the order. Now, this aspect, negative impression of the order. Now, in later years, Venerable Sariputta often encouraged the Buddha to institute Patimokkha or Vinaya rules for the monks. So in the early days, the first many years, there was no Patimokkha or no Vinaya precepts for the monastics. Why? Because the candidates renouncing and becoming the Buddha's disciples were of high caliber. They were very disciplined. Religious discipline was very good, and the Buddha did not have to institute any precepts for the monastics. As time went on, the quality of the monastics or people wanting to become monks under the Buddha, the quality of them dropped, and many of them were seen to be doing silly things. Venerable Sariputta saw this and suggested many times to the Buddha to institute all this. And one of the reasons was that when monks do not behave, simple behavior is not a matter of just when we say behave, we normally think of how they act in front of other people. That covers many things, from how you wear robes, whether you walk mindfully or not, whether you are a gossiper, always talking, not meditating, not calm and composed, and all this kind of thing, mannerisms and so on. All these are visible to the villagers, the townspeople, when they are, especially if they are the villagers come to the monastery to listen to Dhamma talks, or the monks were to go out on pintacara, alms round. So how they behave, their deportment is very, very important. And why is that? Because the people in the village do not know Dhamma, and you have to give a good impression of the order, how well behaved they got, their uniform, their stature, their way they walk, the way they talk, and so on. They give the lay people a good impression so that they are willing, they consider coming to the monastery to listen to the Buddha's teachings. And once that happens, and if they are the maturity is advanced, they may consider renouncing the world. So this one has direct impact on expanding the Sangha and so on, and also whether the lay people continue to provide support, moral support, material support, and so on to the Sangha. So this aspect of impression of the order is very, very, very critical. So negative impression is to be avoided. So one of the purpose of the Vinaya or the Patimokkha 227 for the monks is also covered in this aspect. Now, Sariputta's caring. Now, he then visited the sick hall and provided comfort and medicine for the monks who were sick. Tending a sick monk called Tisa that everyone had rejected, the Buddha had said, those that tend the sick tend me. Now, this one is the famous story in which the Buddha and Venerable Ananda was going on their rounds to different cell groups, different groups of Buddhist monks in different parts of India, and they came across this particular one, and they found this sick monk having dysentery, and the other monks in the monastery didn't bother to take care. And the Buddha, together with Venerable Ananda, had the monk cleaned up and comforted. Then the Buddha called all the monks in that particular monastery and scolded them with these famous words. And it's because of these words which the Buddha admonished the remaining monks in that monastery, that become the what they call the motto of Buddhist monks to offer what they call comfort and to those who are ill and sick. So Buddhist hospitals have this as a foundation statement. Now, Sariputta, reminding the monks of this, encouraged the novice monks to help with the caring and comforting of the sick. In any of them required medicine that was not available on site, he arranged for it to be obtained. It was only after such duties were taken care of that Sariputta went on his alms round. So there are many documented instances of Sariputta's ministering to the sick. His instruction and comfort to Anathapindika. Now, Anathapindika is not a name, it is a title given to a person whose personal name is called Sudatta, a millionaire who stayed in Savatthi. And it is Sudatta that actually bought Prince Jeta's land, the so-called famous Jetavana. Vana means grove, Jeta's grove, and built a monastery there, which today we call it Jetavana Monastery. The foundation stones are still visible in India today for pilgrimage. So Anathapindika means feeder of the poor. Now, Sariputta helped Anathapindika on 2 occasions. The first was when he was sick and in excruciating pain. Now, Sariputta had reminded Anathapindika that he was a Sotapanna, and as such, on the path to enlightenment. He could not fall away from Dhamma or obtain rebirth in one of the unhappy planes. Now, these words relaxed Anathapindika's mind and gave him great happiness. The excruciating pain disappeared. So grateful was Anathapindika to Sariputta that he offered him the rich meal that he had been prepared by his servants and to tempt him to eat. Later, when Anathapindika passed away, Anathapindika, being a Sotapan, was reborn as a Deva, and this Deva came back to pay respect to the Buddha and the various members of the Sangha, like Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda. Now, Sariputta's humility. Now, his humility is also documented in the text. When traveling with the Buddha, he did not feel that as a first chief disciple, his place should be next to the Buddha. Instead, he trailed behind, helping the sick and infirm monks who usually lagged behind. In fact, because of his immense compassion and caring, on one such occasion, Sariputta was the last to arrive. As all the good accommodations had been taken, Sariputta slept in a tent made of ropes. Now, on another occasion, a 7-year-old novice monk brought to Sariputta's attention the fact that his inner robe dragged below his outer robe. Now, this one is a minor rule in the Patimokkha, and so this young novice, 7-year-old noticed that, and moving aside, Sariputta adjusted his robe, then saluted the young monk and asked, "Now, is it correct, teacher?" So the Sariputta, being one of the chief disciples and Arahat, addressed the 7-year-old novice as his teacher, because the 7-year-old was able to highlight this, what they call, violation of the minor rule to Venerable Sariputta. Now, the Milinda Panha documents Sariputta's account of this incident. Now, Milinda Panha, made up of two words, Milinda and Panha. Panha just essentially means questions. Milinda is the Pali version. Other texts will refer to this Greek governor on the northwestern portion of India. Remember, Alexander the Great had been conquering all the way from Greece all the way to the northern portion of India. And when Alexander the Great withdrew his army, he left behind a Greek governor called Menander. In Indian language, they call him Milinda. So this what we call Greek governor had many questions to this young monk when he encountered. So this question and answer has been compiled into the this book called the Milinda Panha, Questions of, they call it king, but actually it's Governor Menander, which I believe is now added to the Tipitaka. Now, Sariputta's respect for his teacher Asaji, who first taught him the Dhamma, is an example that all should follow. Now, the past year question also touches on this aspect of Venerable Sariputta's what they call becoming an Arya, especially with respect after the Venerable Asaji taught him. Now, each night before sleeping, Sariputta would pay obeisance to the Buddha. Then he would look around, prostrate himself, and worship a direction. Observing this, the monks informed the Buddha that Sariputta had taken to worshipping the different directions. Although bracket here, north, south, east, west, this one is the Western way of narrating worshipping of the directions. And in India, India and eastwards from India, Indians normally pay respect to the first direction is the east. East, second direction is the south, then west, then north. Okay, that is the Indian way. Not the north, south, east, west as recorded here by this particular author. This author is following the Western approach. The Buddha corrected their assumption by saying that each night, Sariputta looked with his divine eye to see in which direction his teacher Asaji was residing. So then, after paying obeisance to him, he slept, placing his head in that direction, careful to ensure that his feet were not in the direction in which Asaji was residing. So the honoring of one's teachers is an integral part of the Buddha's teaching. Now, Sariputta's patience. Sariputta's patience and forbearance are also legendary. A group of men were praising the noble qualities of the elder when a young Brahmin challenged them, saying that the reason Sariputta had never shown anger was because he had never been provoked. To prove that Sariputta, like others, would resort to anger, he walked up behind the elder and dealt him a resounding blow. Now, Sariputta said, "What was that?" And then, without even turning around to find out who had hit him, continued walking. The Brahmin was overcome with guilt and shame at his conduct. Falling on his knees, and he begged pardon and told Sariputta how he had hit him to provoke anger. Sariputta then forgave the Brahmin. Now, the Brahmin, not satisfied with a verbal pardon, asked Sariputta to come to his home for a noonday meal to show that he bore no malice towards him. Sariputta accepted the invitation. Now, after the meal, as Sariputta was leaving, he saw that a mob of angry supporters had gathered with sticks and stones to punish the Brahmin. They had witnessed the Brahmin's treatment of the elder, whom they loved and respected. Sariputta asked them what the commotion was about. When informed, he asked, Whom did the Brahmin strike, you or me? On being told that it was the elder whom the Brahmin had struck, he dispersed the angry crowd by saying, I have pardoned him. What cause is there for anger when I, whom he struck, feel none? Now, the last debt paid. This was to do with Venerable Sariputta's mother. By the way, Sariputta. Putta means son. Sariputta means son of Sari. In this case, son of Sari, the son of the mother's son, in other words. Despite the fact that he had a large following and was well respected, Sariputta had difficulties convincing his mother, Rupa Sari, of the truth, as she had been taught from birth the doctrine of the Brahmins. Mind you, during the Buddha's time, there was no Hinduism. The doctrine of the Brahmins, basically, they were the Brahmana religion. Now, all six, that means all six here refer to Venerable Sariputta's brothers and sisters. All six took ordination under the Buddha and attained arahantship. Kunda was in later years Sariputta's attendant. Kunda was the youngest brother of Sariputta. Despite the fact that Rupasari had such distinguished children in the order, she herself was a non-believer, deeply set in Brahmanical rites and rituals. Now, when Sariputta visited the city of his birth with a large gathering of monks, why did he do that? Because he viewed that he was getting old, and when he looked into the future, he found out that normally the chief disciples will pass away before the Sammasambuddha. And when he viewed himself, he knew that his time was almost up. His life force was almost used up. So he took leave from the Buddha, and he journeyed back to his, shall we say, in Malaysia, balik kampung, went back to see his mother and so on. Now, when Sariputta visited the city of his birth with a large gathering of monks, he came to his mother's house for alms. His mother was offering them food, insulted him in front of all the monks by berating him. Notice here, I put a lot of ... The story is much longer. I've cut them short. Now, Sariputta, however, did not say a word. He took his food in silence and returned to the monastery. Now, when Sariputta's life was nearing its end, he decided that it was time to convince his mother of the truth and place her on the Buddha's path. Sariputta knew that he had to first open her mind so that she would be receptive to the Buddha's teaching. He also knew that the only way that could be done was by shaking the confidence she had in Mahabrahma, knowing that the Brahmins, including Mahabrahma, had great regard for him. He decided to go to his birthplace to pass away on the same bed in which he had been born. So entering the city of his birth, he sent a message through his nephew, informing his mother that he and his retinue would be staying with her for a day, and asking her to prepare his birth chamber and residence for his 500 monks. He then walked slowly to his childhood home. Rupa Sari was perplexed at his son's appearance. I wonder, she thought, if he has realized the error of his thinking in leaving all his wealth. Perhaps in his old age, he has grown wiser. He has come back to reclaim his wealth. She then went about preparing for her son and his retinue. Now, Sariputta approached his mother's house and entered the bedchamber where he had been born, but he was now in great pain and very sick with dysentery. He lay down to rest while his brother, the novice Kunda, attended to his needs. The four leading devas of the Chatu Maharajika heaven Chatu means four, Maha means great, Rajika means kings. So the four great kings. This, by the way, is plane of existence number 6, one above human realm. Human realm is number 5 from the bottom. Chatu Marajika is plane of existence number 6 out of 31. Now, seeing that the marshal of the Dhamma was about to pass away, the four great devas descended in all their radiance to pay obeisance to the venerable elder. Now, do note that plane of existence above the human realm, number 6 up to number 11, deva worlds, all the word deva means luminous. So when devas appear on earth, that means if you are visible, if you manage to see them, they would be points of light. They will be very bright. They don't need your lamps to light up the place. So hence the term radiance now descended in all their radiance to pay obeisance to the venerable elder. You will recall in the Mangala Sutta, in the dead of the night, a delegation of devas came to ask the Buddha some questions. So the sutta starts off with the whole forest area was illuminated. So the word deva is not translated as God, not God, but actually luminous ones. So these kinds of beings have this characteristic. Now, shortly after, Saka, king of the Tavatimsa heaven. Now, this is plane existence higher than the Chatumarajika, illuminated the whole area with light and descended to earth. And kneeling before the elder, paid obeisance to Venerable Sariputta. Finally, Mahabrahma, in his full radiance. Now, Mahabrahma is not within the first 11 planes of existence. Mahabrahma is plane of existence number 12, 13, or 14, that range. Mahabrahma, in his full radiance, descended to pay his last respects and catch a glimpse of the elder. Rupasari approached her son and questioned him on his visitors. Who are the four radiant beings, she asked, who paid obeisance to you? Sariputta replied, the four great divine kings, Upasika. Are you then greater than them? Asked his mother. And Sariputta replied, they are like temple attendants, replied Sariputta. Ever since our master took rebirth, they have been standing guard over him, swords in hand. Now, interesting, swords in hand. In the galaxy, you see the Chatu Marajika, two on either side of the door. They are holding certain kinds of weapons. So even in Indian, what they call stories also, they talk about swords in hand. So these are four great kings, or sometimes you call four guardian gods or four guardian angels, referring to these four great kings. His mother then questioned him on his next visitor, who surpassed the four kings in radiance. And ... So there are many others, Tavatimsa and other devas. So then later it came to Mahabrahma. So that, replied Sariputta, is your Mahabrahma, the Lord and Master to whom you have been paying obeisance. So are you then greater than my Lord Mahabrahma? Yes, Upasika, replied Sariputta. On the day our master was born, it is said that Mahabrahma received the great being in the golden net. So upon hearing this, the Brahmin woman, Sariputta's mother, thought, how great must be the power and goodness of my son's master. And she was suffused with happiness, joy, and confidence in the Buddha. Sariputta, seeing that his mother was now ready to receive the teachings of the Buddha, explained to her the Dhamma based on the virtues of the Buddha. At the end of the discourse, his mother attained the first stage of sainthood, Sotapanna. Then the elder, pulling his robe around him, lay on his side and entered into 9 successive attainments of meditation, going in different orders of jhana, in forward and reverse order. Then passed through the 4 absorptions, and just as the crest of the sun was rising at early dawn, Venerable Sariputta passed away, attained parinibbana. Next morning, when his mother found that he had passed away, she lamented at the missed opportunity to perform meritorious deeds for her son, and thus lamenting and crying at her own former family, spent the morning. For even as a Sotapanna, she still had not eradicated all attachments. As mentioned, a Sotapan has only uprooted 3 out of the 10 defilements. For more information about the life of Venerable Sariputta, at the bottom, the source, I provided 2 sources. Now, Sariputta's contribution. Sariputta's enormous contribution as the marshal of the Dhamma can be understood by his description of his attainment of superior knowledge and the Buddha's praise of the elder. Sariputta said, "It was half a month after my ordination friends that I realized in all their parts and details the analytical knowledge of meaning, the analytical knowledge of the doctrine, the analytical knowledge of language, the analytical knowledge of perspicacity. These I expound in many ways, teach them and make them known, establish and reveal and explain and clarify them. If anyone has any doubt or uncertainty, he may ask me. I shall explain the matter." Now, Sariputta, with his 4-fold analytical knowledge, not only excelled in understanding the Dhamma, but also in teaching it so that others could understand. Because of this, his excellence in the Anupada Sutta, the Buddha declared him a true spiritual son and his chief assistant in turning the wheel of Dhamma. The Buddha said, "If one could ever say rightly of one that he has come to mastery and perfection in noble virtue, noble concentration, noble wisdom, and noble liberation, it is of Sariputta, and the one can thus rightly declare. If one could ever say rightly of one that is the Blessed One's true son, born of his speech, born of the Dhamma, form of the Dhamma, heir to the Dhamma, it is of Sariputta that one could thus rightly declare. After me, O monks, Sariputta rightly turns the wheel, the supreme wheel of the Dhamma, even as I have turned it." The Buddha's high regard for Sariputta is seen again and again. In one instance, the Buddha compared Sariputta to a crown prince as follows. If he's endowed with 5 qualities, O monks, the elder son of the world, monarch righteously turns the wheel of sovereignty that has been turned by his father. And the wheel of sovereignty cannot be overturned by any hostile human being. What are the 5 qualities? The elder son of the world monarch knows what is beneficial, knows the law, knows the right measure, knows the right time, and knows the society with which he has to deal. Similarly, O monks, is Sariputta endowed with 5 qualities and rightly turns the supreme wheel of Dhamma, even as I have turned it. And the wheel of Dhamma cannot be overturned by ascetics or priests or deities or Brahma, nor by anyone else in the world. Now, what are those 5 qualities? Sariputta, O monks, knows what is beneficial, knows the Dhamma, knows the right measures, knows the right time, and knows the assembly that he has to address. Now, for more information, I show this page because this was the cover of my sharing during the senior class, MBE senior. But from this set of slides, which I've added to the back of the PDF notes, which I'll later share, I like to highlight this aspect. Now, the exam questions talk about the encounter of Upatissa, the lay name of Venerable Sariputta, Upatissa and Venerable Asaji. Now, here the title, Upatissa Pasine. Pasine means question. Now, in other words, Upatissa's question. Question to whom? Question to Venerable Sariputta. Okay, Upatisa's question. Here I recollect some excerpts from that particular story. Now, Venerable Asaji. Now, you would remember that Venerable Asaji is one of the 5 ascetics practicing together with ascetic Gautama, and later at the Deer Park Isipatthana, the ascetic Gautama became the Buddha, Sammasambuddha. He came to the Deer Park to teach the 5 ascetics. The 5 ascetics are also known in Pali as the Panchavaggiya, Pancha meaning 5. Panchavaggiya. So Asaji is one of them. Now, during the first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, Asaji did not attain any stages of enlightenment. But later, after the first sermon, with few further tutorials by the Buddha for the 4 of the ascetics, at the end of the first sermon, Kondanya had attained the first state of sainthood, had attained Sotapan. The balance 4 had not, and Asaji was one of them. So, with further tutorial, Venerable Asaji, together with the other ascetics, attained the first stage of sainthood. When all 5 attained the first stage of sainthood, then the Buddha taught the second lecture, the second sermon, the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. Then all 5 Sotapans, the 5 ascetics, attained Arahat. Okay, this is the background of who is Venerable Asaji. So Venerable Asaji had gone for alms in Rajagaha, the capital of the Magadha kingdom. And when he had finished, when Upatisa was going around town, he noticed of all the people there and other ascetics also going alms round. He found that this particular venerable had a different look, a certain radiance about him, as most arahats have. In fact, not only arahats, Sotapan also has certain radiance. They look different from other normal human beings or putujanas. So then Upatisa, the wanderer, approached him, and on arrival, exchanged courteous greetings with him. After exchange of friendly greetings and courtesies, he stood to one side. As he was standing there, he said, "Bright are your faculties, my friend. Pure your complexion and clear." This is the standard stock phrase used by different people to refer to people who attain arahathood. Not just that, even Sotapans also have this kind of look. So this stock phrase is used for observers to describe these people who have attained at least the first stage of sainthood. On whose account have you gone forth? Or who is your teacher? Or in whose Dhamma do you delight? So this basically is Upatisa's question to the Arahat Asaji. Then Venerable Asaji replied, "There is, my friend, the great contemplative, the son of the Sakyans, gone forth from the Sakyan family. I have gone forth on account of that blessed one. That blessed one is my teacher. And it is in that blessed one's Dhamma that I delight." But what is your teacher's teaching? Upatisa asked. What does he proclaim? And Venerable Asaji replied, "I am new, my friend, not long gone forth. Only recently come to this Dhamma Vinaya." Now, this term Dhamma and discipline, or the Pali word is Dhamma Vinaya, is commonly used in ancient texts. Dhamma Vinaya does not necessarily refer only to the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha refers to his own teaching as Dhamma Vinaya, but at the same time, people like Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta, who were not Buddhist, ascetic Gautama's first 2 teachers, also refer to their doctrine as Dhamma Vinaya. So you must be very careful as to whose Dhamma Vinaya are you referring to. That means the doctrine and discipline. So in this case, of course, the doctrine and discipline of Gautama, the Buddha. And Venerable Asaji continued, I cannot explain the Dhamma in detail, but I will tell you the gist in brief. Then Sariputta, the wanderer, spoke thus to the Venerable Asaji. Speak a little or a lot, but tell me just the gist. The gist is what I want. What use is a lot of verbosity. Then Venerable Asaji gave this Dhamma exposition to Sariputta the wanderer, or Upatissa. Now, as mentioned in the presentation in the senior, this Pali 4-line stanza is very, very famous, especially in archaeological terms. Whatever phenomena arise from cause, their cause and their cessation, such is the teaching of the Tathagata, the great contemplative. This 4-line stanza essentially is found in the Vinaya Pitaka. Notice Pancha Vagya Kata. So the 5 ascetics, Kata means commentary, the commentary to the 5 ascetics. Then to Sariputta the wanderer, as he heard this Dhamma exposition, there arose the dustless, stainless Dhamma eye. So he sees the essence of the teaching through this 4-line stanza. Whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. So the Pali here is Yang Kinci Samudaya Dhammang Sabbang Tang Nirodha Dhammang. Those who went for the course entering the stream has spent a lot of time looking at this statement and the various translations of it. Then Sariputta, the wanderer, as he had promised earlier with Moggallana, whose lay name at that time was Kolita. So Upatissa went to look for his good buddy, Kolita. And Kolita, the wanderer, saw him coming from afar, and on seeing him, said, bright are your faculties, my friend, pure your complexion and clear. Could it be that you have attained the deathless? And Upatissa said, yes, my friend, I have attained the deathless. But how, friend, did you attain the deathless? And just now, friend, I saw Venerable Asaji going on alms in Rajagaha, and the story he narrates all over again. Notice, Upatissa had just attained the first stage of sainthood, and his look has been transformed. Even his good buddy, good friend, Kolita, recognized there is some change in him by seeing him coming from some distance. Okay, that was a what I call a recap of something we covered in what I call in senior stage for you to revise over. Now we go over to Ayasma Ananda Thera, some aspect about his aspiration, qualities, and virtues also. As mentioned earlier, the past year exam questions on Sariputta is extremely popular. The second most popular is that of Ayasma Ananda. Now, this one happened long time ago. To attain the position of personal attendant of a Buddha, one needs to aspire to the position and perform many meritorious deeds over a period of 100,000 world cycles. Now, Ananda had this aspiration 100,000 world cycles ago at the time of Buddha Padumuttara. At the time, he was born as Sumana, the younger half-brother of Bodhisattva Gautama, known at that time by the name Jatila. He provided the requisites during the 3 months of the rain season to the Buddha and his retinue of 100,000 monks. He then aspired to be the personal attendant of a future Buddha. Now, Buddha Padumuttara looked into the future and saw that this aspiration would be fulfilled. He informed Ananda that in 100,000 world cycles, he would be the personal attendant of the Buddha Gautama. So from that time onwards, Ananda continued to perform meritorious deeds to fulfill his aspiration. Now, during the first 25 years following the Enlightenment, we have moved away from the aspirations 100,000 world cycles ago. Now we're talking about the circumstances that led to Venerable Ananda being appointed as the chief attendant of the Buddha. So during the first 20 years following the Enlightenment, underneath the Bodhi tree, Gautama the Buddha had a series of temporary attendants to look after the Buddha and his affairs. They included monks like Nagasamala, Nagita, Sunakata, Upavana, Radha, Meghiya, Kunda, and Sakata. However, none of them were reliable, and there had been occasions when they disobeyed the Buddha and had left the Buddha on his own by dropping the Buddha's bowl and the robe on the ground. So at the age of 55 years, while addressing a congregation of monks, the Buddha expressed the desire to have an attendant on a permanent basis as he was advancing in years. Now, you must understand that during the early days, when the Buddha just started spreading the Dhamma amongst the Indian population, the number of followers were few. But over time, it grew. Gautama the Buddha grew in popularity, not just among ascetics. He had many students, but also among lay people and among the royalty. So ordinary lay people as well as kings. So everybody wanted to see the Buddha whenever the Buddha was in this town or that town. So administrative requirements became very demanding. So here the Buddha at 55 years decided to address this issue, that he need a good personal attendant to administer the ever-growing audience that the Buddha had to encounter. So because of this request, several senior monks offered to become the chief attendant, but they were not accepted by the Buddha. Now, Venerable Ananda, however, kept quiet and did not offer to become the chief attendant. And when asked by the fellow monks, his response was, the Buddha knew best whom to choose. Now, when the Buddha expressed his desire to appoint him as the chief attendant, Venerable Ananda did not accept it straight away and said that if the Buddha agreed to 8 conditions, he would agree to become the chief attendant. Now, these 8 conditions are very important. Now, he was not to receive any robes gifted to the Buddha. He was not to be given any alms food offered to the Buddha. He was not to reside in the Buddha's residence. He was not to be included if the Buddha received personal invitations to a meal. And the next 4, he would accept invitations on behalf of the Buddha. He could bring visitors coming from distances to see the Buddha. He could approach the Buddha whenever he has any doubts about the Dhamma. The Buddha would repeat to him any teaching given in his absence. As you can recognize, the last one is probably one of the most important. Otherwise, because Venerable Ananda was not present during the first sermon, how would we know? So the Buddha had to repeat to him all that he had taught to this party or that party when Venerable Ananda was not his personal attendant. Now, Venerable Ananda has explained that he asked for the first 4 conditions to make sure others will not consider that he became chief attendant to receive material benefits. I think Venerable Ananda knew very well that the lay public or those who are not enlightened have a lot of things have a lot of opinions and suspicions, and I will talk bad about Venerable Ananda especially. So he requested the first 4 conditions. So the 4 latter conditions would show that the Buddha had regard for what he did, and then he was benefiting in his spiritual development by serving the Buddha. So the Buddha agreed to these 8 conditions, and hence Venerable Ananda was appointed as the chief attendant to the Buddha. Do note that these 8 conditions, this aspect has appeared in past year questions. Now, duties as the chief attendant of the Buddha. Now, these are duties that he had carried out diligently and meticulously to the satisfaction of all concerned for the following 25 years until the passing away of the Buddha. Now, Venerable Ananda carried out many daily tasks to fulfill the Buddha's personal needs, such as arranging the Buddha's seat, bringing in water for the Buddha to wash, supplying toothpicks, massaging and fanning the Buddha when needed, providing medicines when unwell or sick. This is important. The Buddha does get sick. And sometimes Dr. Jivaka will come and attend to the Buddha also. Now, cleaning the Buddha's chamber and mending the robes. Now, he would sleep nearby in case the Buddha needed him at any time of the day and night, and would walk around the Buddha's chamber several times in the night to make sure that the Buddha was safe. As the constant companion, he would accompany the Buddha whenever the Buddha walked within the monastery or outside, and carried messages from the Buddha to other monks. Now, Venerable Ananda also performed as the Buddha's secretary, dealing with the communications between the Buddha and the other monks and the lay devotees. He will keep the Buddha informed of what is happening within the community of monks, lay devotees, and those belonging to the other religious sects. He will make appointments for the Buddha to receive visitors or give sermons to appropriate individuals or group of individuals. He was responsible for calling the monks to an assembly whenever the Buddha wished to address them. Whenever he felt that someone would benefit from a discourse by the Buddha, or that someone had a doubt or a question about a teaching that only the Buddha could answer, he would request the Buddha to address them. And the Buddha almost always did so. Now, it is believed that it was Venerable Ananda who designed the robe that is worn by the Buddhist monks and nuns. Remember the paddy field pattern? To reduce the sentimental and commercial value of robes that the monks and nuns receive, the Buddha had asked Venerable Ananda to design a robe made from small pieces of cloth, and he designed it on the model of rice fields, which are divided into squares. Along with the 2 chief disciples, Arahat Sariputta and Arahat Mahamoggallana, with whom he had very close and cordial relationship, Venerable Ananda was responsible for managing the day-to-day issues of the monastic community of monks and nuns, as well as the monasteries and the community of lay disciples. Now, relationship with the Buddha. Now, Venerable Ananda and the Buddha were first cousins and were born on the same day as descendants of the Sakyan clan. They grew up together, and when he was 37 years old, he was ordained by the Buddha. From the age of 55 years, he looked after the Buddha with great devotion and dedication until the Buddha passed away, aged 80 years. Now, though the Buddha was a teacher, Venerable Ananda, the pupil, they had a very warm, caring, and mutually respecting relationship with each other. When the Buddha was sick, he would care for the Buddha and find the necessary medicine. Now, one day when the Buddha was recovering from an illness, Mahanama, the householder, by the way, Mahanama is a Sakyan, probably one of the Buddha's relatives also. The householder visited the Buddha and wanted the Buddha to teach him about concentration and wisdom, which would have been tiring for the Buddha. So even with no prompting from the Buddha, Venerable Ananda took Mahanama away and gave him a discourse on the subject that he had asked the Buddha to teach. Now, if Venerable Ananda thought that a visit by the Buddha to a monk who is seriously sick would be helpful, he would propose it to the Buddha. And most of the time, the Buddha would comply with it. For example, when a monk named Paguna was seriously ill and was suffering, Venerable Ananda suggested to the Buddha that it would be good if the Buddha visited him. The Buddha visited the monk, Paguna, and after inquiring after his health, delivered a sermon which helped him become a non-returner, Anagami. That is the third stage of sainthood. Similarly, when a monk named Giri Mananda was seriously ill, Venerable Ananda suggested it would be good if the Buddha visited this monk. But on this occasion, the Buddha taught him the Girimananda Sutta and asked him to visit the monk and recite it to him. It was said that after listening to the discourse from Venerable Ananda, this monk recovered from his illness. Now, some of the conversations between the Buddha and Venerable Ananda have led the Buddha to deliver very important discourses. For example, when Venerable Ananda stated that dependent arising, paticca samuppada, was deep and profound, but it appeared quite clear to him, the Buddha disagreed and delivered the Mahadidana Sutta, detailing the dependent origination. Now, it is one of the most profound discourses contained in the Digha Nikaya, the collection of long discourses. Now, similarly, in the Upada Sutta of the Samyutta Nikaya, when the Venerable Ananda stated to the Buddha that he thought admirable friendship is half of the holy life, the Buddha disagreed and described how an admirable friendship is the whole of the holy life. In the sutta is recorded, the Buddha replied, Venerable Ananda, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. And the monk has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades. He can be expected to develop and pursue the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, once when the Buddha was suffering from a stomach ailment, Venerable Ananda cooked a rice gruel which had helped the Buddha on the previous occasion. However, the Buddha reprimanded him as it was not the proper behavior of a monk to cook food in the monastery itself, and made a rule that it was an offense for a monk to cook for oneself. Now, during the last year of the Buddha's life, when the Buddha was frail and sick, it was Venerable Ananda who continued to look after the Buddha until the Buddha's passing away. Now, in 3 verses of the Theragatha, the verses or poems or hymns of elder monks, Venerable Ananda has described how he served the Buddha. For 25 years, I served the Blessed One. I served him well with loving deeds, like a shadow that does not depart. For 25 years, I served the Blessed One. I served him with loving speech, like a shadow that does not depart. For 25 years, I served the Blessed One. I served him well with loving thoughts, like a shadow that does not depart. So deeds, body, speech, and mind. This is how Venerable Ananda served the Buddha. Now, though Venerable Ananda had attained only the first spiritual stage of stream enterer compared to many of the Buddha's senior disciples, he had a great skill and a reputation in teaching and explaining the Buddha's teaching to other monks, nuns, and lay devotees. So this is referring to Venerable Ananda's teaching skills. The Buddha was aware of this skill and on numerous occasions would give a brief sermon so that the monks have to approach Venerable Ananda to expand on that particular subject of the teaching. When those monks reported back what Venerable Ananda has taught them, the Buddha will confirm and praise Venerable Ananda's understanding of the teaching and his teaching skills. On other occasions, the Buddha will start to teach and then request Venerable Ananda to continue it while the Buddha was taking rest, and again praising him in front of the congregation of monks. For example, in the Seka Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, having given a lengthy discourse to the Sakyans in the reception hall in Kapilavatthu, the Buddha asked Venerable Ananda to continue the discourse while the Buddha took some rest. Now, Ananda, speak to the Kapilavattu Sakyans about the person who follows the practice of one in training. My back aches, I will rest it. Now, when Venerable Ananda finished giving the discourse, the Buddha got up and stated, Good, Ananda. What you have said to the Kapilavattu Sakyans about the person who follows the practice for the one in training is good. Now, Venerable Ananda had a particular skill in teaching the Buddha's doctrine to followers and of other sectarian teachers without putting them down their teacher's teaching or glorifying the Buddha's teaching. For example, in the Sandaka Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, he gave a discourse to the wanderer Sandaka and his followers about the 4 ways that negate the spiritual life and 4 kinds of unreliable spiritual life. At the end of the discourse, Sandaka praised Venerable Ananda's teaching skill and advised his followers to go and become disciples of the Buddha. His incredible master Ananda is amazing, namely that there is no glorifying one's own teaching and putting down the teaching of others. The Dhamma is taught in its own field, and so many emancipations are recognized. Then the wanderer Sandaka addressed his own followers. Go, good sirs, the spiritual life is lived under the ascetic Gautama. Now, just a sidetrack. Notice here, reference to the Buddha is this person who is not a Buddhist, refers to the Buddha as ascetic Gautama. In the sutta, the Pali term is called Samana Gautama. Samana means ascetic. So very often, people of other religions will refer to the Buddha as Samana Gautama or Gautama the ascetic. Now, once when King Pasenadi requested the Buddha to teach his queen and the other ladies at the palace, it was Venerable Ananda who was requested by the Buddha to go and teach them. Subsequently, the king had praised Venerable Ananda's teaching skills. Now, Venerable Ananda is also foremost in certain aspects. Now, among the Buddha's disciples, both male and female, the Buddha has recognized and declared some of them to be foremost among the disciples in terms of a particular skill. The vast majority of the 75 eminent disciples were foremost in one particular skill only. For example, Arahat Sariputta was foremost in wisdom, while Arahat Mahamoggallana was foremost in psychic powers. It was only Venerable Ananda who was recognized by the Buddha as being the foremost in 5 different skills. It is a credit to Venerable Ananda that he received these 5 preeminences while still being only a stream enterer, while all the others had attained Arahathood. So what are these 5? Most learned, Bahu Sutta. Good retentive memory, Sati Mantu. Good behavior, Gati Mantu. Being energetic, Ditti Mantu. Attending on the Buddha, Upataka. Now, in the past year questions, many of the questions do not point to all 5 of these qualities, but to the last one, attending on the Buddha. Upataka is mentioned in past year exam questions. Now, Venerable Ananda, also known as the treasurer of the Dhamma, Dhamma Bandhagarika. Now, Venerable Ananda may have been present when the Buddha delivered most of the discourses, and if he was not present, the Buddha would have repeated them to him. That is part of the 8 conditions. The number 8 is very important in this aspect. Venerable Ananda is known to have had a phenomenal skill in remembering things that he hears once. For example, it is believed that he could remember of what he had heard once from the Buddha, from 1 to 60,000 words in the correct order. in the Theragatha, the hymns or poems of the enlightened elders, Venerable Ananda says that he was familiar with 84,000 Dhamma topics that he had heard from the Buddha and other main disciples. So he says, in the Theragatha, he says, 82,000 teachings from the Buddha I have received, 2,000 more from his disciples. Now, 84,000 are familiar to me. So it is quite natural that Venerable Ananda came to be recognized as the treasurer or the guardian of the Buddha's teaching, which came to be a great asset during the Buddhist Council. This aspect, the mention of the Buddhist Council, is also referred to in past year questions. Please note this aspect also. The picture here, for those who are familiar, who have gone through the previous lectures, this is talking about the Satapani caves just outside of Rajagaha, the site of the first Buddhist council. Now, the Buddhist council that was held 3 months after the Buddha's passing away. Now, most of the Buddha's discourses that were included in the first 4 of the 5 collections, Nikayas, at the Buddhist council began with the phrase, "Thus have I heard, Evang me sutang." Now, referring to Venerable Ananda, as all of them, with no exception, were recited by him at the council. The Buddha had recognized and appreciated Venerable Ananda's ability to remember all of the discourses that the Buddha had delivered in various contexts. Once a devotee asked how he can pay homage to the Dhamma, having paid homage to the Buddha and the Sangha, the Buddha advised him to pay homage to Venerable Ananda if he wished to pay homage to Dhamma. And he was quoted to have said, "If you wish to honor the Dhamma householder, go and honor Ananda, the guardian of the Dhamma." This particular page is taken from a sharing at the senior MBE senior towards the end of the first council. Recital groups, large groups of monks called Banakas were grouped together with given specific tasks. So Banakas are speakers who recite the teachings, or rather remember and chant all the suttas, and are responsible for the spread of the teachings. Now, at the end of the first Buddhist council, it was mentioned that the Digha Nikaya, a collection of long discourses, was given to Venerable Ananda and his disciples with the task of remembering and preserving these discourses in the Digha Nikaya. The Majjhima Nikaya by Venerable Sariputta, which by the time when the Buddha passed away, Venerable Sariputta had passed away before the Buddha. So basically, it's not Venerable Sariputta, but his disciples. Samyutta Nikaya, Mahakasyapa and his disciples. Anguttara Nikaya, Anuruddha and his disciples. Notice at the end of the first council, there was no such thing as Khuddaka Nikaya. Okay. Now, another achievement, some might say, was regarding the formation of the order of Buddhist nuns or bhikkhunis. I have not seen this appear as a specific question with respect to Venerable Ananda in the past year question, but I thought to include this because it's one of his important contributions. Now, the Buddha's foster mother, Mahapajapati, here Prajapati, this is Sanskrit spelling, P-A, Pajapati is a Pali spelling, had asked the Buddha to ordain her as a nun, but the Buddha had refused her request. However, the foster mother did not give up, and accompanied by a group of 500 Sakyan women, including the Buddha's former wife, Yasodhara, they walked a long distance from Kapilavatu to Vesali. Now, Kapilavatu is at the foothills of the Himalayas, down to Vesali, southeastern, and just outside, just nearby is the Ganges River, to visit the Buddha and to request again the ordination as nuns. When Venerable Ananda found them with swollen feet exhausted and dirty from their long walk, with tears in their eyes, he sympathized with them and decided to approach the Buddha on their behalf. Initially, the Buddha rejected his request 3 times, but when he asked whether it was possible for a woman to develop spiritually and gain enlightenment by leaving the domestic life and following the Buddhist path of liberation, the Buddha agreed that it was possible. Then Venerable Ananda spoke on behalf of Mahapajapati Gautami, reminding the Buddha that it was she who was a foster mother who brought this Buddha, or rather Prince Siddhartha, when Prince Siddhartha's mother, Mahamaya, passed away 7 days after childbirth. He also pointed out the fact that the previous Buddhas had ordained women as nuns in the Buddhist dispensation. Venerable Ananda managed to persuade the Buddha, who stated that women would be ordained if they agreed to 8 specific conditions, and they agreed to these conditions swiftly. Hence, Mahapajapati Gautami and all the accompanying women were ordained, forming the order of Bhikkhunis for the first time. And Venerable Ananda obviously played a not just a significant but pivotal role. Now, popularity among the nuns. Because of Venerable Ananda's prominent role in the formation of the order nuns, he was popular among them. It is said that he had an attractive personality and physical appearance, which may also have made him popular among them. His teaching skills also made him a popular monk among the nuns, and he used to visit them often to teach the Buddhist doctrine. Now, the last portion of this sharing on Venerable Ayasma Ananda is regarding the Ananda Bodhi tree. Now, many persons came to Jetavana to pay homage to the Buddha, to learn his teachings. Sometimes when they came, the Buddha was away, helping a person in distress and so on. Now, the Buddha, taught for 45 years. And when this Jetavana monastery was built, the Buddha spent something like 19 vasas there, but the Buddha will still walk into other parts of India and share the Dhamma. So the Buddha was not always at Jetavana monastery. So as many had traveled long distances to see the Buddha and were disappointed, Venerable Ananda asked the Buddha what could be done to help those disappointed devotees. The Buddha then asked Ananda to bring a sapling from the Bodhi tree in Buddha Gaya and plant it in Jetavana. He then said, "In my absence, let my devotees pay homage to the great Bodhi tree that gave me protection during enlightenment. Let the Bodhi tree be a symbol of my presence." Those who honor the Bodhi tree would in essence be honoring and paying homage to me. Now, ever since that time, Buddhists from all over the world have venerated the Bodhi tree as they would the Buddha, with scented water, flowers, and incense. Just a cautionary note, the Bodhi tree at the Bodhgaya or Buddha Gaya is of a species known as, often called a pipal tree. Not all pipal trees are Bodhi trees. Only that the particular pipal tree under which the Buddha sat under to gain enlightenment is called a Bodhi tree. But today, that particular Bodhi tree has already passed away. Okay, and a sapling earlier had been taken and planted at Jetavana Monastery. Another sapling, a more famous sapling, has been transported by Bhikkhuni Sangamita, King Asoka's daughter, Bhikkhuni Sangamita, to Sri Lanka, okay, and planted there. And from that time onwards, many of the Bodhi trees you find, say in Brickfields, Mahavihara, Kuala Lumpur, or in Mahindraman, Penang, and many other Buddhist temples, can trace their ancestry back to the one in Sri Lanka. Okay, so only those lineage that has that particular lineage are still called Bodhi trees. But the other pipal trees are not Bodhi trees. Now, many uninformed persons have misunderstood this symbolic action by saying that Buddhists worship trees, that the Buddha statue, the Bodhi tree, the relics of the Buddha are but symbols of the Buddha that people use to focus the mind on the compassionate and serene qualities of the Buddha. The veneration of the Buddha provides the tranquility and peace of mind that many people cannot readily acquire to meditate, study, and listen to his teachings. Now, the story of the Ananda Bodhi tree normally is according to the commentary to the Kalinga Bodhi Jataka, Jataka story number 479. Here I give you a link to the SBS or Satana Raka's article on this particular aspect. There are more details if you follow that link, if you want to know more about the Ananda Bodhi tree. Okay, so you can still refer to the notes which I shared last time in the senior stage, which I will provide at the end of this sharing in the PDF file. Now, Ayasma Sivali Tera. Now, this particular section is somewhat shorter. I will not go through all the slides because many of them are chantings and so on for your reference, which I've already shared during the senior. So essentially, these are the similar slides. Now, frequently when you go to many Buddhist homes, especially Sri Lankan, in fact, this picture is a Sri Lankan artistic rendition of Sivali Arahat, frequently called Sivali Arahat, or rather referring to Ayasma or Venerable Sivali. And is not the Buddha, but notice he has his right hand into his arms bowl. This is a characteristic of Sivali Arahat. Now, at the time of Buddha Gautama, there reigned a righteous king and queen named Koliya and Supavasa. After some time, Queen Supavasa conceived a child. The unborn child brought great fortune to the kingdom. Not only did the queen receive many gifts from friends and relatives, but the whole kingdom became prosperous. Crops grew in abundance, and everyone was well fed and healthy. The queen grew heavy with child, but when the natural time for the birth arrived, she failed to deliver the baby. Now, in Indian society, in Indian literature, they normally refer to the pregnancy as 10 months. Normally, our modern day, we refer to 9 months pregnancy, but in Indian literature, they refer to the gestation, the pregnancy period, as 9 months. 10 months, sorry. So anyway, she grew uneasy as time passed by with still no signs of the birth, and asked the king to invite the Buddha and his retinue of monks for a meal. After the meal, the Buddha blessed the queen by saying, "May Supavasa, daughter of the Koliya clan, be happy and healthy and give birth to a healthy son." So these are some of the what we call maps which should be familiar in India in those days during the Buddha's time. Anyway, after the Buddha left, the queen gave birth to a beautiful, healthy son. As a mark of respect for the Buddha, who had eased the queen's heavy burden with his blessings, he and his retinue were invited to receive alms at the palace for 7 days. The prince was named Sivali. As from the time of his conception, the people's hardships were alleviated through an abundance of rich crops. One day, when Venerable Sariputta was on his alms round, he visited the prince and informed him of the suffering that he and his mother had undergone because of the delayed pregnancy. Now, the picture on this page is that of Venerable Sariputta, not that of Sivali Arahat. Now, Venerable Sariputta then went on to explain to the prince the unwholesome action that his mother and he had performed and the resultant effects of their actions. This was done many, many lifetimes ago that resulted in the delay in his mother giving birth to him. Now, in the previous birth, Sivali had been born as the king of Benares and had waged war on the neighboring kingdom. He had surrounded the kingdom and told the citizens to surrender or fight back. When they refused to surrender, in collaboration with his consort, his present-day mother, he had decided to surround the city and hold them hostage until they did so. This is a common military tactic used in many parts of the world. Now, the citizens who did not want to fight back or live under the rule of such a king had not surrendered. As a result, they had suffered greatly without food for a very long period. Many of the sick and the elderly had died, but the arrogant king and his queen had not given in. Many months after the king had withdrawn his troops and released his hostages, but he had paid dearly for the suffering he had caused. At death, he was reborn in Avicii hell. So this is probably plane of existence number 1. The delayed pregnancy and the suffering he and his mother had undergone resulting from the delay were the residue effects of this, unwholesome action many lifetimes earlier. After illustrating the noble truth of suffering, Venerable Sariputta asked the prince if he would like to join the noble order so that he could seek the path to end all suffering. The prince was overjoyed at this invitation and agreed to join the order with his mother's permission. The queen, who was a devoted follower of the Buddha, agreed. She escorted Prince Sivali in procession to the monastery to be ordained. On the day of the ordination, when his hair was shaved, Venerable Sariputta advised Sivali to meditate on the impurities of the body. Sivali, who was spiritually advanced, resulting from previous wholesome actions, focused his mind as instructed. When his first lock of hair was cut, he attained Sotapattipala. It means the fruit of Sotapanna. He attained the second stage of sainthood, Sarakami Pala, on the second lock of hair, and Anagami Pala on the third, and Arahata Pala on the final lock of hair. At that time, he was only 7 years old. The monks soon noticed a strange phenomenon when they were with Sivali. Sivali always seemed to have abundance of rich, fragrant food and the other requisites, robes, shelter, and medicine. Monks who were with him also had the opportunity to share in the requisites. Wherever Sivali went, people flocked around to prepare food for him. Sivali was indeed blessed with all the requisites of a monk. And so it was that wherever Sivali traveled, he was well taken care of. He and his retinue of 500 monks were in an uninhabited forest for 7 days, but they were not short of food. The Devas made sure that all their requirements were met. Similarly, when Sivali was traveling through the desert, his requisites were provided. The Buddha, seeing that Sivali was fulfilling a previous aspiration in his reign, declared that he was foremost among the monks in obtaining requisites. He also instructed monks who were traveling on long, tedious journeys through uninhabited terrain to be accompanied by Sivali, as with him by their side, they would be ensured of requisites. In fact, on one occasion, when the Buddha and his retinue of 30,000 monks were traveling to visit the monk Kadira Vaniya Revata, Venerable Sariputta's younger brother, they had to cross an uninhabited forest. Ananda, fearing that they would not be obtained food in the jungle, for such a large number of monks questioned the Buddha about the logistics of the journey. The Buddha assured Ananda that they had nothing to worry about as Sivali was with them. So with Sivali present, there would be no shortage of food because even the devas reveled in taking care of his requirements, which obviously was overflowing until everybody else around Sivali will get a chance to makan also. So in general, the effects of one's wholesome and unwholesome intentional actions were reaped only by the doer. However, there are instances, as with Sivali, that others too benefit from unusually strong actions of another. This overflow of the results of the effect of one person's strong karma on others is known as Nisanda Pala, overflowing results of karma. While Vipaka Pala, results of karma, are reaped only by the doer, Nisanda Pala, are experienced by others who happen to be with you. Nisanda Pala could be both wholesome and unwholesome in accordance with the deed performed. For instance, Venerable Sariputta did not obtain alms in one instance resulting from Nisanda Pala of Lokasa's strong unwholesome deeds. Now, to see the cause of this phenomena, we need to go back many eons to the time of Buddha Padumuttara. Now, Sivali, who had been born as a poor man many lifetimes ago, had the opportunity to see the Buddha Padumuttara confer on another monk the honor of being foremost among monks who obtained the requisites. Fascinated by the way everyone desired to provide alms and robes to this monk, Sivali had decided that he too would like to hold a similar position in a future birth. He then performed many acts of generosity to the Buddha Padumuttara and his retinue and made an aspiration. The Buddha then, foreseeing that Sivali's aspiration would be fulfilled, and prophesied that at the time of Buddha Gautama, he would be foremost among the monks who obtained requisites. From that point onwards, Sivali has started in earnest to work towards his aspiration. At death, he was reborn in the heavenly realm where he enjoyed many years of heavenly bliss. The next documented birth story took place at the time of Buddha Vipassi, 91 world cycles before Buddha Gautama. Now, Sivali was born as a merchant in the city of Pandumati. The city was preparing a great alms giving for the Buddha Vipassi and his retinue of monks when they realized that they were short of curd and honey, a delicacy that was often served after the noonday meal. Messages were sent all over the city to obtain the required delicacy. Unable to obtain the quota required, the king's men raised the price of the curd and honey from 1 gold coin to 100 coins. In the meantime, Sivali, a merchant who sold curd and honey, was approached and offered 100 gold coins for his merchandise. Sivali was surprised at the unusually high offer and asked for whose consumption they were buying the curd. And on being told it was for the Buddha Vipassi and his retinue of monks, Vipassi asked permission to donate his wares to the Buddha. He then renewed his aspiration to be the foremost among the monks who received requisites. The Buddha Vipassi, seeing Sivali's aspiration would be fulfilled, blessed him by saying, "May your aspiration be fulfilled." Now, Sivali then became a devotee of Buddha Vipassi and practiced his Dhamma. Now, resulting from this strong aspiration and the meritorious deeds and efforts performed in previous births, Sivali fulfilled his aspiration to be foremost among monks who obtained requisites at the time of Buddha Gautama. To date, Buddhists venerate Arahat Sivali and often keep a picture of a discourse or a discourse in their home as a symbol of abundance of food and prosperity. Here, I will not go through this Dhammapada verse 414 for your reading pressure, but of interest is the since they are mentioned of previous Buddhas, these next few slides give a summary of 24 Sammasambuddhas, the previous Sammasambuddhas. We are familiar with number 1, Dipankara Buddha, with the Bodhisattva, that means who later became Buddha Gautama, the Bodhisattva by the name of Sumedha, offered flowers to Dipankara Buddha, and so on. Most of you are familiar with this story. Notice number 10 is Padu Muttara Buddha. And the Gautama, the Bodhisattva at the time was of the name Jatila. So you can see the number 19 here, Vipassi Buddha. At the time, the Buddha Gautama, as a Bodhisattva then, was a Naga king. And coming closer to the time of Buddha Gautama, you have Kasyapa Buddha. Okay, this is just for your information. Many Buddhists, devout Buddhists, would chant this Sivali Parita. I will not go through, but provided as part of the slides for your reference. The exam does not cover this. This is just supplementary information. The last few slides are of interest. We are talking about definitions. Kappa, K-A-P-P-A, endless, normally called endless long period. Antara Kappa, interim period. Asankhya Kappa, 20 such Antara Kappa equal to 1 Asankhya Kappa, and so on. These are ancient units of time. Mahakappa, 4 Asankhya Kappas equal 1 Mahakappa. And there are further definitions. Just for general information, it won't come out for your exam as far as I have seen so far. Okay, that's all for this afternoon sharing, a little bit long. But the accompanying notes, the PDF version, will contain all that I've shown, plus the the senior MBE senior lecture files on the 2 venerables, Sariputta and Ananda. The one on Sivali I've already shown you, which actually the same notes for the senior level, which actually happen to cover all that is needed for your higher level exam. So that's the end. Sabba papa sakaranang kusala sa upasampada sacitta paridapanang etang buddhana sasana. That we should avoid all evil, do good, purifying our minds, and this is the teaching of the Buddhas. Dhammapada verse 183. Closing Anumodana benediction, reciting the Pali only. Akasatta ca bummatta deva naga mahitika punyang tang anumoditva cirang rakkantu sasanang cirang rakkantu desanang cirang rakkantu mamperan. Patidana. Idang vo nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatuyo. Idang vo nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatuyo. Idang vo nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatuyo. Closing veneration. Arahang samma sambuddho bhagava buddhang bhagavantang abhivademi. Swakato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namassami. Supatipanno bhagavato savaga sangho sanghang namami. Saddhammo cirang titatu. May the good doctrine long endure. Sabbe satta sukhi hontu. Thank you for your attention. Any particular questions? I'll stop sharing now.
Brother Ananda, may I ask
Yeah, sure.
question on Sariputta? I don't know if I remember it correctly. I thought he was hit on the head by a yaka and not by a human being, or is there another instance?
I believe there is another instance.
Okay, different instance.
Different instance. Similar incident, cannot hit on the head, but different one.
As a test of his patience also.
Yeah, probably. A lot of Buddhist monks are subject to these kind of things, including the Buddha also. You cannot scolding and all kind of things. They accuse Buddha or Sariputta or other monks of this and that.
Okay, can I ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
About Venerable Ananda and his failure to request the Buddha to stay on to leave out the aeon. Venerable Ananda failure to do so has caused the Buddha to renounce and say 3 months later I will pass away.
Yeah.
How do we understand that? I mean, how did that happen? I mean, he's most foremost in memory, and how did he forget that?
It's not a matter of forget. The issue is understanding. Now, what happened was, as this incident, for the rest, in case I think all of you should be familiar, this is recorded in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, in which one day, as the Buddha was journeying through various parts of India, the Buddha, so I use the term hinted, or he mentioned to Venerable Ananda that the Buddha had the ability of performing certain psychic powers, itipada, and essentially is mind over matter, that he could prolong his life for another period. Of course, how long is that is subject to question what they call contestation, because they use the word kappa and mahakappa and all that. You cannot expect the Buddha's body to survive for another 1,000 years and human years and this kind of thing. By that time, the Buddha was already 80 years old, and many instances have been recorded where the Buddha was having a lot of physical ailments. So he was very old and his body was giving out already. So when he mentioned this ability, mind over matter aspect, to Venerable Ananda, some commentators, some people who just remark on this particular aspect, claim that the Ananda was not paying attention, or he didn't understand what the Buddha is saying. And some other commentators mentioned that the Venerable Ananda's mind was under the influence of Mara. Now, the term Mara here is complicated, because there are essentially at least two kinds of Mara. The Mara as a deity that makes trouble for the Buddha as well as the Buddha's disciples. The other Mara, it just means your personal defilements. Okay, so in this case, I do not believe it is the deity Mara that they go and disturb Ananda, because he's right in front of the Buddha. The Buddha would know that whether there's a deity around or not, and all this kind of things. So it's likely when they say Mara, Mara influenced Venerable Ananda's mind, it probably meant Venerable Ananda's defilements had clouded his understanding. So when the Buddha mentioned this ability, Venerable Ananda didn't understand the implications of this aspect or pay attention to this thing, and he missed the opportunity to invite the Buddha to stay with the human race for a bit longer. Okay, not necessarily another 1,000 years, but at least a bit longer. And of course, after that, the Mara came and Mara, the deity, came and took advantage of the situation and invited the Buddha to pass away. Mara, the deity, has invited the Buddha to pass away many, many times, including after the enlightenment at MBE2023 and a few other times also. This is the final one, where the Buddha finally agreed after he revealed that the Buddha has already established the fourfold assembly. That means he had already trained many monks, many nuns, many male devotees, and many lay female devotees, that they are already well established in the training. So the Buddha agreed to that deity Mara's request. So back to your question, essentially he's talking about Venerable Ananda not understanding what the Buddha meant by all this. And other than that is various people offering comments as to what happened to Venerable Ananda, probably not paying attention and don't understand. And they use the term Mara, Venerable Ananda was influenced by Mara. It means Venerable Ananda's own defilements. Okay.
It means he just didn't take the hint.
They didn't take the hint, or was not paying attention. He was thinking of something else or something like that. So that one we don't know, but the rest, as far as we are concerned, is the rest is history. We cannot go back and find out exactly what happened. We don't have a time machine.
Brother Ananda Fong.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we always mention that all the suttas will start with Ewang Me Sutta.
Most suttas, I won't say 100% all suttas. There are a few suttas that do not start out.
Like Ratana Sutta it doesn't start that way. Karaniya Metta Sutta doesn't start that way.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the Metta Sutta, Karaniya Metta Sutta, but the Ratana Sutta, I read an extract that I think by Venerable Agachita, Ayasma Agachita in the book, in the Entering the Stream book, he mentioned that the Ratana Sutta was a later edition. That means it was not inside the first council. So that explains why the Ewang Me Sutta is not there.
Yeah, he said that it's a later edition.
He mentioned in the book. But I don't know about the Karaniya Metta Sutta. It would be nice to do some research on this Karaniya Metta Sutta. Although the story says that the Buddha advised a group of monks that they were perturbed by the forest hantus, that disturbed them in their meditation during their vasa and all that. So, but whether that is correct or wrong, that was another story. Okay, that would be interesting to do a research on that one. But I agree with you that not 100%, all utterances in the say in the first council was Ewang Me Sutta. Most of them have, but some do not.
Okay, then another question. Just now you mentioned there are 24 Buddhas. That means 23 before Gautama.
Yes.
But in the Atthavisati-Parita,
yes,
there are 28 of them.
Yes. Now, the accounting for each of them, I haven't done a lot of research, but I do know that in the main Nikayas, that means the 4 Nikayas, excluding the Khuddaka Nikaya, the 4 Nikayas, the suttas there mention 7. The Sammasambuddha is recorded in some of the suttas that mention 7 Sammasambuddhas. Okay, 7 previous Sammasambuddhas. So the additional Sammasambuddhas are added into added into a book in I think I forgot what was the book. Added to one of the books in the Khuddaka Nikaya. So these are later additions. So it is within the shall we say, I don't know about Mahayana and Tibetan, but at least in Theravada Buddhism, the word is called Theravada Buddhism. They accept all these later additions. So if you are a purist, you will ignore the later additions and you follow what the 4 Nikayas, which are recorded as the older recorded suttas, and that means the 7 only as in the suttas. All the additional are just added on later. How accurate, how correct, that one is anybody's guess. But it is in the Tipitaka. It is in the Khuddaka Nikaya as a later addition. So there are only 7.
Ananda.
Yeah.
With regards to Venerable Ananda's contribution in forming the Bhikkhuni order.
Yeah.
After the Buddha agreed to, he actually prophesied that because of this, the sasana will last only 500 years instead of 1,000 years. So are we in the correct sasana, or has it ended already?
That particular aspect is up to scholarly discussions. We are not at that level yet. Whether it's true or not sure. But definitely, if you go into the details of the ordination for candidates to become bhikkhunis, I presume you already know that there is a twofold ordination process. To ordain monks, to ordain as bhikkhus, you just go to the bhikkhu sangha and that's it. But for the bhikkhuni sangha, you have to be ordained by the bhikkhu sangha as well as an existing bhikkhuni sangha. 2 rounds of ordination. And the Buddha instituted many additional conditions to safeguard the bhikkhunis, because in those days, you must understand, most of us, when you read all these stories about ladies during those times, we are thinking of the conditions of ladies in our time, which are very much better. Not perfect, but in those days it's even worse. So the women folk, whether as daughters, the daughters of a family belong to the father. The wife belongs, they are owned by the husband. That's why in some of the stories you can read that the husband can give away the wife and give away his daughters. These are peculiar to the ancient Indian custom those days. Why is that? I cannot say. This is called culture in those days, 2,600 years ago. How it developed to be like that. This is Indian culture, not Buddhist culture. This is in societal culture in those days. And even bhikkhunis, ladies who managed to become bhikkhunis, there have been records of them being raped, got pregnant, and gave birth also. So conditions of women folk in those days are very, I will use the term treacherous. Their safety is so in the Vinaya Pitaka, I've heard, I'm not expert in bhikkhuni matters, but I've heard of mention that in the Vinaya Pitaka, there's mentioned that the bhikkhuni monastery, the arama, cannot be built too far away from the bhikkhu arama. Why? They expect the bhikkhus to come to the aid and assistance. The bhikkhus are expected to provide safeguarding for the bhikkhunis, because in case of this raiding and all this craziness in Indian society in those days. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are stacked against, in terms of culturally and societal norms and all those things, against women folk. So I guess why the Buddha even refused the ordination of his foster mother when she requested it the first time, and even when Venerable Ananda requested, he also kena rejected by the Buddha, probably because of these safeguards. But the Buddha can see into the future. I'm sure the Buddha knows that he will finally approve of it, but he wants to drum up the sentiment. They want to have enough publicity to note that there is a need for these people to want to renounce. There is a need to safeguard, to provide safety for them, provide requisites for them, and take care of these bhikkhunis. Okay, so therefore, when the Pajapati, Kotami, and many of the palace ladies and the foremost ladies in the Second Kingdom walked all the way, don't know how many hundred of kilometers from the Kapilavatu all the way to Vesali. Maybe I'll do a Google map check and see how many kilometers that is. I believe it's very far. Definitely further than Kanga to Johor Bahru, further than that. And this is on foot, not on carriage. No ETS, no rail transport. So that's why when they reach Vesali, swollen feet, very dirty, and all these kind of things, that I believe. So with those kinds of conditions, when the Buddha had these ladies, what they call, highlight to the community that the women folk needed emancipation, then when they fulfilled that requirement, then only the Buddha agreed with Venerable Ananda, because the publicity was there already, and a lot of the lay people there would step forward. In fact, after Pajapati Kotami accepted the 8 conditions, she was deemed to have been ordained as a bhikkhuni. What happened? Some of the Lichavi princes, that means one of the communities within the Vajjian kingdom, Vajjian republic. Vajjian is not a kingdom, it's a republic. Built a monastery for these bhikkhunis to stay in also. So they didn't balik kampung to Second Kingdom, they stayed back in the Vajjian Republic, and later she grew old and passed away in that particular locality. So support for the ladies are what So back to your question, 500. Well, now do not forget that the term 500 in Indian, in the suttas, just means many, 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 many. So if there are 500 monks, it just means many, many monks. How many? We do not know.
Also, it could be arbitrary. It's an arbitrary
It
number.
could be arbitrary, could be what lah. But what happened is, cut the long story short, coming forward in time, what happened was the survival of the Bhikkhuni Sangha was so problematical that at least in Indian soil and even in Sri Lanka, at least in Theravada countries, most of it died out. So the two-stage ordination process was not possible by the Bhikkhu Sangha and the Bhikkhuni Sangha because there was no Bhikkhunis left. So you cannot be ordained. That's why I believe many of the Sangha members in the traditional Theravada countries have not proceeded with any ordination of Bhikkhunis. Okay, because the tradition is a two-stage ordination. But saying that when the Bhikkhuni Sangha was carried forward to Sri Lanka by Sanghamitta, King Asoka's daughter. Later on, the Bhikkhuni Sangha in Sri Lanka sent a delegation over to China to ordain some China or Korea, somewhere that region, ordain, and so-called the Bhikkhuni flame, like Olympic flame, the Bhikkhuni flame was transferred there. So many more in the 20th century, some members of the Mahayana, I don't know which Mahayana group, sent a large representative to India, and with many of the Theravadan respected monastics, the bhikkhus, as well as what they call bhikkhuni candidates, were ordained as bhikkhunis. So they view it as transfer the flame, the bhikkhuni flame, back to India to rekindle that process. But of course, those are a different lineage already lah. They are Mahayana, which Thailand, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka doesn't really accept lah. But although there are still bhikkhunis in these countries, like Bhikkhuni Dhammananda in Thailand, and recently passed away, I forgot, some famous bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. They are wearing the saffron robe. They are not 10 preceptors. They are the 300 over precepts. So those are carrying on the flame as sparked off by the transfer of bhikkhuni flame from China back to India. It's recorded in the 20th century. I think it will involve Venerable K. Sri Dhammananda and many other monks. I don't exactly know the details of that story. Okay. There are many books on, some books by Bhikkhu Bodhi and a few others that talk about the Bhikkhuni Vinaya and so on, and how they can be revived in the spirit of the ordination. But that's beyond the scope of the MBE higher. Okay.
Okay, Brother Ananda, last one.
Yeah.
With regards to the Arahan Sivali, it seems his contribution is he's foremost in getting
food
donations.
Requisites.
Requisites. That's his contribution.
That's all. He attracts food, attracts requisites. That's all.
Okay.
He doesn't have to do anything. He did a lot of things in his previous life. He created all those merits, and now because of that, he's foremost. So wherever people hang around him, he has overflowing requisites going to him, which he will pass on to everybody around him. That's all.
So that makes him the top 3 foremost disciples.
Not really top 3. I would say there are no such thing as top 3 lah. It depends foremost for what. So foremost for wisdom is Ayasma Sariputta. Foremost for psychic power is Maha Moggallana, and Venerable Ananda has foremost for 5 other things. Okay, and Sivali is foremost for receiving requisites, and there are many other monastics.
Okay.
And then which is a Jataka tale that is related to the Parni of Sivali?
Oh,
because the question actually asks for the Jataka claim that is related to
one
Sivali.
of the slides I already showed the commentary regarding the Jataka.
Okay. I'll go back and have a- Okay.
Let me see whether I can find it. Oh, I have to find it again.
Never mind.
I'll
go
check through the
I go
slides.
through.
If I miss
go
that
through,
part
okay.
out, I will forward it to you also.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
None at the moment.
Okay, so I'll come to check the Sivali Jataka side. To come back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brother Tan. Brother Ananda Fong, sorry.
No problem.
Thank you, Brother Ananda.
Welcome. Okay, I will send the PDF slides later. Okay. Good evening. Now already 5:05.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.